All right, welcome back into another edition of the Ohio State of Mind podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Chen, and on the other side of that video screen is Josh Keatley. Both of us are contributors to Buckeyes Wire on the USA Today College Wires Network. And this podcast is all about Ohio State. It's Wednesday, June 19th, 8 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. Um, and I think the biggest news in Buckeye Nation this week, it came out yesterday, and we'll get into a little bit of we'll continue our conversation from last week about going through the rest of the Big Ten in just a moment. But we want to hit this Caleb Downs story and the Alabama transfer, freshman All-American safety, one of the nation's top recruits in his class. He's been sitting in meetings with the running backs. Coaches are considering using him as a running back. I think that's just a little crazy, to be honest with you. I would hate to see our best defensive player get hurt on an offensive play, but I do get it. You see it across the country. Travis Hunter over there, Colorado, kind of doing the same thing, right? But Josh, what are your thoughts on Caleb Downs potentially getting reps at running back this fall?
I don't mind it. This is the day and age of college football where versatility is kind of king. You're seeing Travis Hunter is kind of leading the way in that regard. High school kids are wanting this. You see this a lot with the recruits where they're asking, hey, am I going to have an opportunity to play both ways? They're wanting that versatility. So I don't have an issue with it. Every now and again, there is a guy that is such a supreme athlete that they can play on both sides of the ball. Devin Hester was like that at Miami with defensive back and wide receiver. Chris Gamble, cornerback and wide receiver to a lesser degree.
Ted Ginn, a little bit.
Ted Ginn, 100% recruited as a cornerback, moved to wide receiver. And he played cornerback at Ohio State for a brief period. We saw Troy Smith on special teams play quarterback. That's very odd.
Wide receiver.
There's some guys that were kind of moved around less because of how studly they were and more because of necessity. But Justin Bourne from fullback to linebacker, Steele Chambers from running back to linebacker, Chip Trianum even last year from linebacker to running back, Xavier Johnson from wide receiver to running back, not switching the sides of the ball, but that is something relevant. You see it all the time with offensive linemen, defensive linemen specifically, right? They move from one side of the ball to another. The difference here is that Caleb Downs is a lot of those guys that I named made a positional switch. The difference here is that the plan is that Caleb Downs is going to be a safety and then spell as a running back. So the apt comparison would be even Travis Hunter is not a good comparison either because that's on the other side of the spectrum, right? You got guys that switch positions, and then you got guys that play both ways. He's going to be somewhere in the middle. He's going to be like Chris Gamble's more of a fair comparison because Chris Gamble was a cornerback that caught a few passes. I'm trying to think of it. Miles Jack, was that the name of the UCLA running back / linebacker?
Yes.
Miles Jack, that's probably a better example. Because Miles Jack wasn't the number one running back. He had like 4 games where he was the dude, right? But he was primarily a linebacker. There's another example floating out there too. I think Stanford had a running back that was kind of like that. So that's more what you're talking about. And that happens. That happens a lot. And that happens. That's really common when you talk about the MAC conference and FCS or FCS conferences. I don't have an issue with it. The issue I have is that this should not be a thing where he demands a role, right? We have a running back group that's filled with 2 All-Americans and a freshman that we keep hearing is a stud, right? So I don't want to see Peoples not get carries because they're trying to force Downs the ball. I don't want to see Quinshon Judkins on the bench because they're trying to get Downs the ball. I don't have any problem with Downs going in there getting a couple snaps because he's that much of a freak athlete to change it up. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I feel like I'm on both sides of my mouth. I agree with you that I don't want him being a full-time running back, but also I don't mind him getting a couple carries because that's how special he could be.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I think that certain packages would be great for him. I don't think that he needs to see more than 10 snaps on offense. I think,
if that. I'm thinking like 5.
I was thinking like 5 is the low end, 10 is the max type of deal. Maybe in a big game, he gets a couple more opportunities just due to trying to get the ball in the playmaker's hands a little bit more. But I'm talking about snaps. I'm not necessarily talking about touches either.
Yeah,
you know,
me too.
And
me too.
You know, right? Maybe he gets 2 touches, 3 touches. Right? Like I'm cool with that. I'm okay with that. He's gonna, he's gonna be used as a little bit of decoy. It's gonna be more of a trick play, type of deal. I'm good with that. He's probably gonna end up returning punts as well. So he's electric with the ball in his hands. Now, you can make an argument that what he did last year wasn't all that great. He did return 1 punt for a touchdown, but everything else after that was not so good. So it's really hard to say whether or not like the kind of impact that he could have on the offensive side. Now, I will say this. I followed his recruitment very closely, obviously due to the fact that, he was highly considering Ohio State out of high school. And while Steve Wiltfong was still at 247, he's jumped over to On3 now. There are multiple times where he wrote that if Caleb Downs wanted to play running back at the Power 5 D1 level, that he could. So I don't think it's outside of the range to think that he could make an impact. I just, like I said earlier, I'm just a little bit more concerned about durability. Running back is a difficult position to play, especially when you don't play it on a very regular basis. You have to kind of get a lather for those hits as a running back, right? You have to get used to it over the course of time. And, yeah, he played in high school, but, he exclusively played safety at Alabama last year. And, I'm concerned about a little bit of wear and tear. And I would hate to see, him potentially suffer an injury, towards the end of the season when the Buckeyes are trying to win a title. So,
yeah,
I'm okay with it a little bit, but they got to watch it. They really have to be very careful with it.
Yes. I'm trying. This is just a really hard topic because there's a lot of variables we just don't know about. I'm with you. I think that the guy is a safety, has the highest ceiling at safety, but he's young enough to where I don't think it shouldn't be explored. Maybe a more appropriate example would be Carlos Williams at Florida State. Carlos Williams started 2 years as a safety at Florida State, started his junior year as a safety at Florida State. They were decimated by injury. They moved him to running back, and he was a very, very solid running back. Nothing to write home about, but very, very much in the same league as a guy like a better version of Mayan Williams, right? A very acceptable running back for Florida State, very solid. The Mayan Williams comparison is a bit of an insult, but you get what I'm trying to say. Very solid running back. And he was probably better running back than safety. So that ended up being the right move, right? I don't think that's going to be a situation with Caleb Downs because Caleb Downs is absolutely, we've seen what he can do as safety. We've seen that he has All-American potential as safety. So I don't, to envision him as being a better running back is pretty crazy to me. But I don't think it's out of the realm for him to be a solid running back. The problem that I have with taking a guy like Steve Wiltfong's words about him being a running back is you hear that a lot. Like that's a pretty not a lot, but there's 2 or 3 kids every year where recruiting experts are like, he could play this position or this position. That might be true. It might not. I don't know. Right. But we hear that enough to where I'm kind of willing to throw it out. Right. I mean, how many Ohio State guys in the past we hear, Jets, the old story about Jack Tatum is that they had the draft and he ended up on defense, but he could have been a running back. Yada, yada. Who knows? Right. They don't really know. They say that about a lot of guys. Right. So I don't want to put too much stock into that because Steve, I'm sure he'll say it about 3 more guys this year. It's just kind of hard. But what you don't want is a situation. I love how I'm bringing up old Florida State running backs like James Wilder. Do you remember the recruitment of James Wilder Jr.?
A little bit.
Yeah, Ohio State wanted him as he was like a 4-star linebacker. Ohio State wanted him as a linebacker. He said, "I'm not going to Ohio State." Florida State promised him he could be a running back. He was a running back at Florida State, and he wasn't very good. He was Mayan Williams. That's a good comparison. If Mayan Williams stayed healthy, James Wilder's a pretty good comparison. James Wilder being great in the CFL, but he probably would have been a much better linebacker. So you don't want Ohio State to be held captive. I don't want this to be a situation where, hey, that's how they got Caleb Downs, was that they promised him he could get a couple touches, and now they're a slave to it, and now he's got to be a running back. That's not why you got Caleb Downs. That's not what Caleb Downs is best at. So we don't want to take away what he's best at to play him at running back. I do think that the defensive backfield is so so talented and so deep that it's not going to negatively affect the defensive backfield to have him play an offensive drive and then maybe sit the bench the rest, the next defensive drive. But again, a 5 snap count that we talked about, maybe 2 touches a game, that'd be pretty fun. But again, it's hard. I know I'm talking out of my ass and both sides of my mouth with this one, but this is the first topic we had where this is the first topic we've had in a long. Usually, if I don't know something or if I'm not passionate about it, I shut up. But this is a topic where it's like, there's a lot of variables. There's just a lot of variables I think we could cover, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because it's exciting. It's interesting.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just, again, I don't mind it. I don't feel like it's the worst thing for the Buckeyes. Now, what's concerning is that they didn't see this coming out of the spring and address it, because you got 2 studs in Henderson and Judkins, right? Like those are your bell cows, But
yes,
part of the issue is that Travion hasn't been able to really stay healthy, right? His freshman year he was healthy, but then the next 2 years not so healthy. And then you've got 2 freshmen behind him, James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon. There's chatter that Williams-Dixon might not end up playing at running back and move over to wide receiver because he's he's a little bit more slight of build. He's very quick. He could be a really good slot guy, maybe take a jet sweep or a couple handoffs here and there on reverses. But, I think that this is a miss on the coaching staff as well. When you're experimenting with your best defensive player on the offensive side, to try and create a little bit of depth, that concerns me a little bit. I would have liked to see them, if that was the case, if they knew this was coming, I would have liked to have them, grab a guy that would be RB3 from the portal. That would have made a lot of sense. And so, the depth is a little bit concerning to me right now. Well, maybe Peoples and Williams-Dixon, perform at such a high level that this Caleb Downs conversation becomes,
well,
it's like beating a dead horse type deal. So I don't know, but I am concerned about that.
That's one of the confusing variables. So I guess in that situation that you laid out of all the 5 minutes of rambling that I did was not in consideration because all spring we were hearing about how good James Peoples was. That's what we were hearing. We were hearing we were hearing that the reason Dallin Hayden entered the portal was how good James Peoples was. Right. So that's a running back room that we were told, or it was inferred that you have 3 Big Ten starting caliber running backs in that running back room. And then a guy in Sam Williams-Dixon that we told was okay. That's what we were told. So the fact that Caleb Downs, I don't think that Caleb Downs experimenting at running back is a sign of a lack of depth. I think Chip Trianum in the past, that was. I think that the Downs thing is more of like, hey, this guy is such an I think that he's such an explosive athlete that they want to see what they can do to break open a game. The negative side that I see as potential is this: did they promise that kid touches to get him to come to Ohio State? Because if that's the case, you've handcuffed yourself to give this guy touches that you don't really want to give him, right? That's the issue that I have. I don't want to be forced to feed him the ball and you not have to, right? The depth thing, and I'm not saying you're wrong. You might be right because the James Peoples thing, we both you had at the beginning of the spring when James Peoples committed, you liked James Peoples more than I did. So I am by no means sold on him being starting running back in the Big Ten.
I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, and he could be. He could be. That's not the argument.
I think he needs time.
That's what I'm saying. So I agree with you that the depth is alarming, but they've told us James Peoples is the shit. They let Dallin. All reports indicate that they were pretty cool with Dallin Hayden walking. They didn't really fight for him. And then they told that UMass running back, who was, again, I know it's the University of Massachusetts, but that guy was a starting running back at Massachusetts, and he was a starting running back at Rutgers a couple years prior in the Big Ten, who had been your third back. Your third back would have been a 1,000-yard carry in the BS. And they told that kid to go kick rocks. So that leads me to believe that they're comfortable with the running back depth. So I don't think that that's why they're experimenting. But again, there's a lot of variables. You might be right. It's just that didn't cross my mind because of that.
So touching on the recruitment of Downs, I do believe that the Buckeyes coaches, Ryan Day, I don't think Chip Kelly is. they did talk to him about potentially playing. Now I don't think they ever said, "Hey, we'll definitely play you on offense." They said, "We'll have a conversation. We'll look at it. We'll look into it. We'll figure out whether it's the right thing for the team and whether it's the right thing for you." So it seems like it might be the right thing to do, but again, there are some concerns about it. There are a little bit of unknowns surrounding it as well. So
you can say it too. Ohio State is an injury-prone team. They
yeah,
are. Every year there's a devastating injury, whether it's
so
Travion
like
Henderson,
a
whether it's
star,
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Marvin
So when
Harrison, like come on,
exactly. When we hear a guy when we hear about a star taking extra
Meke
snaps,
Luka,
everybody in Ohio State Nation's butthole puckers up.
they all get.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, we mentioned Bosa, both of them, right? There's just so many guys that are contributors that are monster contributors, potential All-Americans. You say Chase Young too, because like all those guys, like every single one of them got hurt when we believed that they were going to be All-Americans. Yeah. I mean preseason, but like I mean it turned out pretty good. I was good with the outcome of that. But you know what I'm saying? Like it concerns me because this happens all the damn time. And I'm sure it happens to the other team. I'm sure it happens to the other teams. I'm sure it does. But we just, we're in a vacuum right here, right? We're in the Buckeye vacuum, and we don't necessarily always like think about like all those other teams that have their stars get hurt for significant portions of time.
Let me interject here because you're right, and I'm guilty of that too, right? I'm stuck in the vacuum of Ohio State, in the history of Ohio State. But with that said, I bet on a lot of college football, my friend. I gamble on a lot of college football. So injuries is something that I pay close attention to.
Sure.
And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find another school that has suffered as many devastating injuries to key players in the last 10 years as Ohio State. Now, I do think that I know that it's recency bias because of Jordan Travis. But Florida State, they also dealt with Dalvin Cook had some injuries when he was leaving Florida State. There was another running back that was leaving Florida State that also had some injury issues leaving. I can't remember. Both of them ended up being very, very high draft picks. I talk about Florida State a lot on this episode, but it's right. But that's recency. I don't know what's going on with that, but that is recency bias. But they're Ohio State. They're in the top 5 as far as devastating injuries go. I mean, Alabama and Georgia were stricken down like that.
I'd love to see someone do that research. I have no idea how to find it.
Maybe Baylor might be up there too,
especially going back that far. I'd love to see that. I think it would be pretty interesting to kind of find out how that would work. Where each team was ranked on that. So if anybody listening knows how to get that information, that would be awesome.
Right.
But you're spot on. And again, that's part of that's one of my initial concerns was I did not want this man to get hurt.
Right. No, it does.
He is so integral. He is so integral to that defense. He hasn't even played a snap. And we know that he is going to be, on All-American lists all year long. The Thorpe Award. He's going to be all over the place.
Right. And I guess that's where our opinion differentiates. Because I do think that if you're going to experiment like this, do it now. Why the defensive backfield is so deep, because I know that let's say we talk about video games and college football game coming all the time. Let's say he's a 99 overall. I mean, that means Malik Hartford's what, a 90? Like, the depth behind him is pretty damn good, dude. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of talent in that defensive backfield.
But it's young and inexperienced. He
was a freshman All-American last year. There's the gap.
I don't disagree with you. There's a shit ton of talent back there. Like
shit ton.
For sure.
I'm not even talking about Trey Styles.
I'm not even. I think he's probably. Anyways, I feel like that. It's really hard to say because you want him to get some snaps, right? Because he's that electric with the ball. But again,
I don't really. For the record, if they never
really excited. For me, it's just hard to get really excited about
it. To be completely honest with you, if they never came out the news at all, I wouldn't give a shit. This is something that we've talked about Caleb Down, his ability to touch the ball before when he initially came over to punts. And I said, I don't give a shit because you have Quinshon Judkins and Travion Harrison. You do not need him at running back. So for the record, I don't give a shit. But I do think I think all I'm saying is that if you are going to do it, now is the time to experiment because you don't want to experiment when that defensive backfield is, if you got, let's say Sonny Styles leaves and oh my God, I'm losing my mind. Not Proctor, Lathan Ransom leaves. Sure. That's two heavy hitters. You've lost that defensive back room isn't such. Denzel Burke is gone. Maybe even Davis Igbinosin. Right. You don't at that point. Then you need all your studs in that defensive backfield.
Right.
So now's the time. That's all I'm saying is that now's the time because you ain't doing it in the future.
I think you have a valid argument with that. But I mean, you go from All-American to maybe All Big Ten. I think there's a big drop off.
For sure.
I really think there is, So that's something that I just
fair drop off.
Personally, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm not playing that game. I'm not messing around with one of my top chips.
I'm not, and that's a fair opinion.
I'm just not. I don't know. I'd rather play in the conservative side of things. And if he gets hurt on defense, he gets hurt on defense, But I would hate to see him, strain a hamstring or twist an ankle while he's playing an offense. And you still, it's in the middle of the game and Quinshon and Travion are just sitting on the sidelines,
And that's the same as him returning the ball too, right? I would hate for him to get hurt returning the ball too when we got Jaden Ballard who, runs a 4-1 flat or whatever it is.
But he doesn't do anything. He never does anything when he returns anything, no Buckeye has returned a special teams kickoff in 15 years or something like that.
We're going to see what
happens. It's something absurd.
Now that the special teams is under
I literally in my preseason predictions, I literally predict that they're going to return a kickoff or punt every single year because it's just got the drought has to end, doesn't it?
Now that Parker Fleming's gone, I want to wait before I open my mouth. But now that Parker, if they announce that Jaden Ballard is a returner and Parker Fleming is gone, I will bet a significant amount of money that he gets a touchdown this year.
Okay.
Yeah, was that your handshake?
No,
Jaden Ballard has to be back.
I was just sliding that head over. I would like to think that that's the case, to be honest with you.
Jaden Ballard is very boomer bust. You could see the excitement when he does have the ball in his hands. The problem with Jaden Ballard is that he's the kind of guy. Was it the UFL? He's the kind of guy. Did you watch the UFL a couple weeks ago when the guy he returned the kick? No, it was the CFL. The CFL opening week. He took the punt return, caught it on the 2-yard. No, it was UFL. Took it on the 2-yard line and he ran backwards and took a knee in the end zone. And they're like, safety. That's a safety. And he's like, no, I caught it in the end zone. They're like, no, dude, you walked backwards 3 yards.
Oh, goodness. I might need to find that.
But again, a lot of that's Parker Fleming. So
I think a lot of it was scheme. Parker Fleming made a bunch of huge mistakes in big games. Let's be 100%. Real here. Obviously the one we all remember is the timeout when they were going to run a fake punt and they had 10 guys in the field. Geez. And it would have worked still with 10 guys on the field, which is crazy. But multiple missed, field goals and just terrible coverage on special.
He was awful. He was really,
the Gunners. It was just overall, it was just horrendous. And I was the biggest proponent of canning his ass, and I'm so glad they did because it made just so much sense. Let's pivot a little bit away from that. And I do want to touch on a couple other things that Ryan Day said in his press conference yesterday. So Day went on and expressed his concerns with the team. And I don't know if Josh, I did share this tweet with you, Josh. So he's got big time concerns with quarterback and the right side of the offensive line. Josh, what are your takeaways from Friday's spewing out?
I don't know if you're the head coach at Ohio State and you're on the hot seat. Are you going to answer this question honestly, or are you going to pick something that everyone's been bitching about for 6 months to get him to shut up? Right? It's a non-factor. He bitched about things that everybody's been bitching about for 6 months, so no one gives a shit, right? He knows who's going to play quarterback. He knows who's going to play quarterback. You can't tell. Quarterback's your big concern. You went out and got the guy that you wanted. Quarterback's your big concern. You kicked out the last year's quarterback because you hate him. Quarterback's the big concern. It's bullshit. Now, the right side of the offensive line, maybe. I might believe that a little bit, but you also had opportunities in the transfer portal, and you didn't address it at all. You chose not to address it. That makes me think that you have a lot of faith. And we've been hearing all year long about Tegra Shabola, the Josh Fryer getting better, Carson Hinsman getting better, the kid Montgomery getting
Luke
better.
Montgomery, right?
No, his concerns. He's full of shit. He's full of shit. He's full of shit. It's a lot easier to say that because everybody goes, "Oh, okay," and they move on because that's everybody's concern, right? But if he says something that's a real concern, like linebacker, like we don't know who we're going to play linebacker, no one has any hair on their balls because no one no one's old enough.
Sure.
Everybody's gonna now everybody's gonna be hounding you. Who's gonna play linebacker? How's CJ Hicks? What's going on with CJ Hicks? What about Sonny Styles? Right? He picked the two most bland things to know. Dude, those press conferences, man, they're so worthless, dude. They're so worthless. When I have to go film those things, he doesn't want to be there. He used to be a little bit more I think, and it's a coaching thing. The older you get, the more you just try to.
Three losses in a row to Michigan will do it to you too.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, I just they might those might be legit concerns, but I don't think they're concerned. I think that maybe the quarterback thing is a concern because he doesn't know what he's going to do yet. And the right side of the line thing, if that's a concern for him, and that ends up being the detriment of this team, he needs to lose his job. Because he had ample opportunity to refill that, right? Sure. And that's not something that just came up. We all watched the Missouri game, so.
I think they confused concerns with hasn't chosen starters.
I would agree with that.
I think that look, is there really a concern at quarterback? Looking at who's there, you've got Howard, you've got Brown, you got Keatholtz, you got Sayin, you got Nolan. You have 5 really, really good options. Like really good. I don't think he can go wrong really with 3 of the 4 or the 5. I'm sorry.
You have a guy that was all conference in a Power 5 conference that you picked. It's not. It's silly.
I mean, Will Howard should be the starter. Let's be real here. Devin Brown probably will be the backup. And then, 3 is either going to Keatholtz or Sayin, but
for the record, I do hope it's Devin Brown that's the starter, just for the record.
Okay.
My stock in Devin Brown and my stock in Devin Brown memorabilia is up.
There it is. There it is.
But I think that you're right. It's clearly going to be
real quick.
Howard.
You should watch this show on Netflix called King of Collectors.
I've heard about that.
You would love it. You would love it. It's all about sports memorabilia. Like Barry Bonds was on the last episode. Who else did they have? Peyton Manning was on it. Ronald Acuna is on it. Like, dude, it is right up your alley. You'd absolutely love it. Like, I'm not.
You should check it out, man.
I'm a collector, but I'm not like that level. And I've binged the last 2 seasons in the last 3 days.
I'll have to check it out.
I'm completely addicted.
Speaking of memorabilia, I went to that autograph signing in Columbus, and Carnell Tate and Will Kazmarek were there. And I didn't get a chance to talk to Carnell Tate for long. I got 5 minutes alone with Carnell Tate. And,
you should have asked him about me.
I should have. You're right. I should have.
Yeah.
I forgot to.
Yeah. Carnell since he was a freshman in high school.
I should have asked about it. But I asked him what he thought I asked both what they thought their college football rating would be.
Oh.
And Carnell, they were both super humble. Carnell said 80. He said he would be happy with 80.
Okay. Okay.
Bro, you'll be way higher than that. This is stupid.
But
Will, I got a chance.
He doesn't have a big resume, but
very humble kid. I got to speak to Will a long time, a good chunk. Now his conversation is not necessarily relevant to this episode because we talked a lot about him at Planet Ohio and Mac guys and yada yada.
Sure.
But he said his college football prediction was 75. He said he would be happy with the 75, and I was like, dude, You're going to be in the 80s. What are you talking about, man? I don't know.
Right.
I don't
I think he's
because
right.
I don't think
I think
he
he's
watched
realistic.
Ohio.
I think that position group overall, when you go through the game, I think they're gonna have the lowest average score on the team.
Probably. That kid is a big boy, dude.
Is he? But yeah, that's what I was just about to ask him. Like, how big is he? And my idea of turning into a left tackle, would it work?
No, he's not that. But he's long. He's very long.
He can't add that. He can't add that. I mean, he's already 270. All he's got to do is add like 25 pounds.
He's
like
no
6'7", right? He was like 6'7", right?
I don't know if he's 6'7", but he's at least.
Isn't that what he's listed as?
6'5". Let's look it up. This makes for good podcasting when we both Google stuff. Oh, he's listed at 6'6". Right? He was tall. 6'6", I mean, he was standing next to Greg Oden, so maybe that made him look shorter. I don't think he's playing.
Standing next to the 7-footer, anybody.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. He's not thick enough to play tackle.
You don't think so? He doesn't have that frame.
And I want to be very clear. He's thick. He's thicker than the other tight ends on the team. Maybe not Jelani Thurman, because Jelani Thurman is thick all the way through.
He's a big boy.
Yeah, he's got vines for arms, long limbs. He's not. Those offensive tackles. I'm just gonna say it. You want a big fat ass on your offensive tackle, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, go like.
You want big ass and a big ass.
Go look at Joe Alt, right? Top pick for the Chargers. He's like 6'6", 6'7", like 300, and he does not.
His ass is pretty large.
Yeah, he's thick, but he's not fat. That's what I'm saying.
No. I didn't say fat.
Right.
But those offensive tackles just have like those tree trunk.
Some of them. Yeah, I mean, and then some of them are just big, like Dewan. Like Dewan's got a gut.
Yeah, but Devon, he's also got tree trunks for legs.
Well, right. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like that slim offensive lineman. Right. They're there still. They're there.
They are. But he doesn't have. I don't think. But you also have
the big gun O lineman too.
I don't think he has the tree trunks to move. I'm trying to think of like Reed Fragel. When Reed Fragel played, was that? Yeah, when Reed Fragel played tight end, it was like, all right, this guy. It's not that he doesn't belong. It's not. I shouldn't say that. It's not that he didn't belong there. It's just that guy he was shaped different than other tight ends. It's like when you looked at that tight end room, you saw Reed Fragel, and you go, okay, I think I understand that guy's role. You know what I mean? I don't think you're doing that with Casmer because Jelani Thurman's just thick, but Will Casmer's just longer. He's just long. He's a really long guy. Big, banana fingers.
Okay. Yeah. Damn. I was hoping.
Maybe. I mean, I could be wrong, dude. I don't know. Maybe you can gain 25. If this was the 80s and he was on some D-ball, maybe. Get him on some of those steroids. Oh, my God. I mean, it's possible.
He's all juiced out, program style.
I mean, it's already June. I don't know.
Maybe. I would have. So if I would have done it, I would have been like, dude, you're redshirting. We're going to put 30, 40 pounds on you, and then we're going to train you to be a tackle the next year. And
I think he'd be cool.
In 25, you'll probably be a starter.
He doesn't seem like a dude that is wanting to go to the NFL immediately. Like he doesn't seem like he transferred to Ohio State to go to the NFL. It seems like he.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You can't teach. Like I watched some of his blocking. Dude can move people. He's moving defensive linemen. He's moving ends that are his weight or more. Like dude's a great blocker. Like. Yeah. Fantastic blocker. I think he's a better blocker than he's a pass catcher too. So, he obviously has a role there and he knows how to do it. So, I don't think I'm crazy with this idea of this transition for him. I don't think I'm crazy. I would like to see it, but maybe they get depth this year and they'll do it next year. I don't know.
I could see. Well, maybe. I think that Carnell Tate gained some weight too.
Did he?
Positive.
Yeah, Carnell's pretty skinny. I mean, he's 6'3", probably about 185 last year. What do you think? He'd be like 190, 200? He's skinny.
You got me. You got me doubting myself now, but I'm thinking I bet he weighs at least 205, dude.
Okay, so listed on the roster for last year it was 191. So I was 6 pounds off. So I said 185, right?
I bet he weighs at
So
least 205.
and he's listed at 6'2". I think he's closer to 6'3", though. Like, I've stood next to Carnell. I know how big he is. I think he's closer to 6'3".
I don't know. They're all taller than me. They're all so taller than me that it's hard to tell. But
I mean, either way, if he's 6'2", 6'3", and like 205, dude,
I'm thinking so.
Big.
That's a big thing. I mean, I go to every home game,
it's like
right?
15 pounds.
Yeah, if it looks like he's a lot thicker, it does.
15 pounds, that's a lot. And it's probably good weight too. He's probably not fat.
No, not at all. He just looks like he's got a fuller chest. Looks like his arms are a little thicker. It looks like he's just been in the weight room. Again, maybe I'm wrong because he was wearing a short sleeve T-shirt. I feel pretty good about that. I feel like he's been gaining about 15 pounds.
Okay.
I think he's ready to roll. When I saw him compared to when I saw him in the fall compared to when I saw him last weekend, I thought that guy's gonna be ready to roll.
He's 100%. He's breaking out. Hit the course of his career. So like like I said, I've known him since he was a freshman in high school. I don't really know too much about his past, but from what I know, he was not very good as a freshman. I saw him when he was still a freshman, but he had completed his football season already. Everybody who knew him prior to when I first met him told me that his gains between week 1 of his freshman season to where we were now, which was it was March or April for that camp, they said that he has grown immensely, that his talent level has just skyrocketed. So it doesn't surprise me that he played a little bit last year, got some good run, and it would not surprise me at all if this young man catches 50 balls for 80 yards and like 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. Like, I don't think that's out of the possibility. I think that a full-time breakout is his junior year where he goes off with over 1,000 yards and like 10, 12 touchdowns, and he's off to the NFL. That's how good I think this young man is.
It would not surprise me if Carnell Tate was the number 1 wide receiver this year. Like, if he ended statistically.
No,
he just
not
looks,
at all.
He looks more complete.
No, it would. But I think he could be a very, very good option 3. Very good. Because, Emeka is going to be number 1 as long as he stays healthy. And then you got Jeremiah Smith. You got Jeremiah Smith, who's like, you just throw him the ball. Apparently, they're calling him Julio in practice, for Julio Jones.
We'll see.
I'm just telling you what I read. I
love him. I love him. I think it's great. I'm going to temper my expectations for now. We see this song and dance before. I mean, we talked about before the spring game. Jeremiah's going to do something too. Jeremiah, and he didn't, and that's okay. Here's the deal. Here's the deal with Jeremiah Smith, because I feel like people come at me like I'm rooting against him or like I'm not believing in his ability. Jeremiah Smith is going to be special. Jeremiah Smith is going to be a first-round receiver. Jeremiah Smith, I think that if he's the number 1 wide receiver this year, wouldn't surprise me at all. No doubt, wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think that his odds are any higher than Carnell Tate or Emeka Egbuka's? No, and I think that that's reasonable to keep your expectations at that level. Our expectations should be that he is a consistent contributor.
So
right?
What would you set his season line at? You say 40 catches?
If he gets less than that, I would not be upset. Does that make sense? Okay. What are we looking at stat wise? I need something to compare it to.
All right, so let's take a look here. We won't talk about Marvin Harrison because he really didn't play until the bowl game his freshman year. So Carnell last year, 18 catches, 264 yards and a score. Inez obviously only had that 1 touch for 58 yards against Purdue, but it did go for a touchdown.
All right, so
those are the only 2 freshmen that played last year.
Let me ask you this. So is your line for if I'm setting the line at 40 receptions, are you taking the over?
Yeah, for Jeremiah?
Yes. Okay, and that's fine. I think that I would honestly agree with you. Let me ask you this, though. Would you be disappointed if it's below that?
Yes.
See, I wouldn't. That's the difference.
Unless he's hurt. I think he's
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That illustrates
what are they
gonna
so hold on here.
So we both would take
40 so 40 right. So 40 in 12 games, and this is not including postseason, etc.
That's correct.
College football
well,
playoff,
whatever line you want to make. Sure.
I'm just saying that because that's how most of these bets go, right? When you do a season over under, it does not go into championship games. It just goes regular season, right?
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
So 40, if we set the over under at 40, all he's got to do is average 4 catches a game, and he'll go over that. I don't think that's out of. I think that's completely attainable for a guy that is what he is. Right. I'd be disappointed. I'd be very, very disappointed, barring an injury, that he didn't have over 40 catches.
See that's this is a good conversation because this helps me clear out my stance on Jeremiah Smith. That wouldn't disappoint me. I agree with you that I would take the over 40. I would.
Okay.
If he hits under that, if he only gets 20 receptions, I'm not going to be mad. 40 receptions is a solid contributor, right? Cade Stover had over 40 receptions, right? And that was a third round. That was a tight end who we both think was a very, very productive tight end. Very productive. Emeka Egbuka had just over 40 receptions last year. And that's a guy who we both view as having All-American potential, right?
But he also was hurt for a good portion of the season.
Right, but it was also his third year. All I'm saying is that if I had to put money on it, I would take the over for 40 receptions. But I don't want to be disappointed when he gets less than that because it's not about what he does this year. It's about what he can turn into 3 years from now, 2 years from now.
No, I don't disagree with that.
Right?
But
there's been a lot of good receivers that didn't do anything that first year. Terry McLaurin, for instance.
I just have very, very high expectations for this young man. And it might be me, just believing all the hype and everything that I read and, all the reports and all that.
But here's the difference. What happens if he doesn't hit 40 receptions? Because in my world, if he gets 20 receptions, I move along. I still write him down as an elite receiver. What do you do? If he doesn't hit 40 receptions, what do you do? Because that's a disappointment in your eyes. So if it's a disappointment, you have to knock him down somewhere, right? I mean, I'm trying to leave the door open so I don't have to reevaluate who he is, right?
I just don't think that happens.
What if it does?
I'm not really but that's not honestly
how many receptions? How many receptions did Carnell Tate have last year?
Was it 15?
Would you would have certainly taken over 15 preseason last year, correct? I mean, this is a guy that we both
18,
really like.
18.
You would have certainly, if we would have had this conversation about Carnell Tate, you would have certainly 15, taken over 18.
Over 18, probably.
Yeah, that's a guy that we both really liked, and I would have too. But I probably would have taken over 40 on him.
But it was also Kyle McCord back then. You have to take that into consideration. No, I'm not saying
that's the Kyle McCord was one of the most productive quarterbacks in the nation. Kyle McCord made a lot of bad decisions, but you can't knock his production. He got the ball out. The offense didn't change. They threw it a shit ton.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, Emeka Egbuka getting hurt should have bumped those numbers. That's what I'm saying. Okay, well then we'll use that example. What happens if Will Howard is a fucking dud, right? And Jeremiah Smith gets 20 receptions. Are you going to be pissed at him? Like, does that make sense? I'm just trying to figure out what are you?
If Will Howard, Devin Brown, whoever the quarterback is absolutely horrendous, similar to what we saw out of McCord. Like, let's be real here. An Ohio State quarterback's always going to put up good numbers just because the offense that they're in that day runs, right? Yeah. So I'm not surprised at the kind of numbers that Kyle McCord could put, but I think he left a whole hell of a lot of yards and touchdowns on the field, though. So, if that's the case, if we're watching two guys this fall that look like what we saw this past fall, then yes, obviously 20 receptions I think would be a great number. But I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that we're going to get a little bit more of a JT Barrett type of situation with Will.
And that's
I think
fine.
that's kind of what we're.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying with Jeremiah Smith, there are these expectations, and I have them too. I want to be very clear. He is special. He is a first-round wide receiver. Honestly, he probably could play in the NFL and make a roster today, this year. And I'm not no, that's probably not true. I'm exaggerating.
No, I don't know. He's a house, man. That dude looks like an NFL guy right now.
I'm not ready to do that yet. But
he can make a 53, but I don't know how much he'd play. But he can make a 53.
Well, he wouldn't play at all. But he's
you kind of have
enough.
to play when you make a 53, but at least on special teams.
That's probably true. Whatever. I'm not ready to sell the house on him.
Sure.
It's just he's a freshman. We've been through this before. There's a long history of freshman wide receivers that are hyped and they don't do anything their freshman year. D. Miller didn't do dick his freshman year, and that was one of the most highly touted receivers in Ohio State history at the time. Right? I mean, we talk about Benjamin Victor all the time. That guy was a 5-star. Johnny Dixon was a goddamn 5-star. You know, Terry McLaurin didn't do shit his freshman year or his sophomore year. You know, I'm trying to think of other examples. Joey Galloway. I don't think Joey Galloway lit the world on fire as a freshman. And that was another, stud, as we all know today. It's very hard to go out there after you smush little boys on Friday and go out there and dominate men. So even if he's
smushing like a bunch of other D1 prospects in Florida.
Right. Okay. So let's break down what you just said. Right. Because if he's smushing other D1 prospects in Florida, right?
Right.
So first of all,
on his level, they're not collegiate athletes. I get.
So let's say that he has 10 games, right? How many of those dudes' corners that he go up against are going to start next year, in the Power 5 level?
I mean, probably not a
lot. Give me a round up. Give me the highest amount you could think of. Be realistic though.
2. Maybe.
Okay, so two are going to start this year at a Power 5 level.
Sure, maybe.
So he's going to play. Now, listen. This number might shock you. 12 starting cornerbacks this year. That's who he's going to play in the Big Ten. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Right? It's just a huge difference. I know what you're saying,
but here's the thing, though. He's not necessarily. He's the number one corner's not going to be covering him, though. He's going to get matchups with. He's going to get matchups with nickels, with linebackers, and he's going to abuse the crap out of them.
We can play the game again if you want. How many of those dudes you think are going to be number 3 corners in the Power 5? That's all I'm saying. It's still a very low number. 2 is probably still the number. I'm not saying I'm not knocking Jeremiah Smith. It's just a lot, right? It's just you go from getting hit by, you go from being hit by a kid that he's bigger and faster than everybody he plays against. Everybody he plays against at the high school level.
Sure.
That's simply not going to happen in college. It's just it can't. It just doesn't. It's impossible.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. I think you're exactly right. But,
and I would take, and I want to be clear, I would take the over 40. I would. I don't want to set it. I don't want to be disappointed by the end of the year because this is still a very special receiver.
I just think he's that special. It's just me. I really do. I really do. All right, Josh, we're getting to the 50-minute mark. Do we want to push off the rest of the Big Ten till next week?
We're gonna have to push it off for
sure. Yeah. I do before we get out of here, there was one other thing that Ryan Day said that I did want to chat about. We make it real short. Lorenzo Styles has been repping with the wide receivers. He mentioned that they want depth at wide receiver, defensive tackle, and safety, which now is that whole Caleb's down conversations again. So what do you think, what do you think of, the Styles move, the older Styles move back to wide receiver, which he played at Notre Dame after, coming over and trying to make the transition to corner, defensive tackle. I think the Buckeyes are pretty set at their starters, but they do have questions behind them. Can Caden McDonald, Caden Curry, can those guys step up behind the starters?
Hero Canoe too, man. I don't know why everybody forgets that.
Yeah, I do forget about him. And I think he's a quality player as well. But Is there anything that sticks out to you about, any of those moves and what Ryan Day said about that?
Yeah, the Lorenzo Styles thing kind of bums me out. This feels like a very DeMario McCall kind of situation where it's like, it sounds like he's not going to play. Now, with that said,
back and forth and transfers out. A little
bit. Yeah, man, it just doesn't feel good. With that said, Lorenzo Styles Jr. did start a wide receiver in Notre Dame. He's got Power 5.
He was not very good. He was not very good.
He was not very good. He was not very good. I would say he was adequate. He was not a liability. He was adequate.
Yeah. Average at best.
Average at best. We can both agree on that. So, with that said, after the spring game, we both had a conversation about Ohio State possibly adding wide receivers to the room through the portal because of the inexperience and the inexperience being so obvious. We both agree that the wide receiver position is extremely deep with talent, but there's not a lot of game time experience. Our continuous conversations about Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate show that. I mean, together, overall, our podcast time has been 75% about two wide receivers who collectively have 18 fucking college receptions. That shows you the lack of depth that they have at that position. So I think it's a bad sign for Lorenzo Styles Jr. Right, exactly. No, I'm with you. Still a very, 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 very talented core. We both agree that
we've been talking about this for a while too. This is not the first time we've talked about this.
Exactly. We're on the same page there. But again, talent and experience are two different things. And I guess I probably should have said that earlier with the
Oh, we may have lost Josh for a second. Let's see if he comes back. And he's gone. I don't know where he went. He did say that he might be having some internet issues. He is not at home today. He's not at home. So, kind of piggybacking on the conversation of, the depth and where Day would like. I think that wide receiver is definitely, something that we've talked about. Obviously, they're young. They just need experience. They're just absolutely loaded with talent. Defensive tackles, you're kind of looking at, a unit that isn't expected to produce a ton, but they still have the ability to make plays. Like, Mike Hall last year was absolutely awesome when he was healthy. Tyleik Williams, who's returning, is a damn good player. You've got some guys back there that can make plays, but maybe 1, 2, 3, and depending on who emerges at 3, it's just you just don't know. Tywone Malone, I'd like to see him do something. Coming from a SEC program in Ole Miss, you expect him to come in and play, and he didn't play last year, and there's not a lot of chatter about him, which I think is really weird. So, honestly, I don't know with the defensive tackles. I think that, it is a concern of mine, and which should be a concern of Ryan Day's. I think that the top of the depth chart looks really good, and I think following that, it's not so great. And then at safety, and again, this goes back to the Caleb Downs situation. And this will be the last point that I make before I wrap it up, because it doesn't look like Josh is coming back. Really what you're looking at is, if you're concerned about depth, oh, there's Josh. He came back. Hey, welcome back. No worries, no worries. I was just going over, my thoughts, regarding the depth at wide receiver, defense tackle, and safety. And it's just covering safety. Again, it's more about the talent thing. And it makes not a lot of sense if you're saying that, you've got depth issues at safety and you're pulling away Caleb Downs potentially plays somewhere else. So that's all I got to say about that. Go ahead.
Well, real quickly, I think I got everything out about the Lorenzo Styles thing, right? I got the point across.
Yeah.
Experience in here. But I disagree with Ryan Day talking about the depth of defensive tackle and the depth at safety. I don't see that when I look at the roster. Like you said, you got Hero Canoe, Caden Curry, Caden McDonald. At safety, you got Malik Hartford. Sonny Styles can play there. I feel like there's a lot So it kind of shocks me to hear him say that about those two positional groups. But I guess we'll see about that. Again, I think sometimes he tries to fill the air with some obvious things, so there's not a whole lot of pushback or argument. But either way, it's interesting. Before we do log off, I do want to add one more thing, Michael. Usually when people reach out to me about the podcast, they say they take my side and this and that and yada, yada, yada. This time I got lit up, my friend, because the Michigan recruiting. Yes. So I do want to give you props. You sufficiently beat me on the Michigan recruiting front. I was informed that Michigan doesn't recruit at the Ohio State's level. They've never recruited Ohio, which is a little hyperbolic. We're talking the last 10 years. Okay, it was brought to my attention that they are not recruiting the same at the same tier, the same clip. It was brought to my attention that the issue was that they recruit more regionally. Many of their stars are from the area. I still fight the fact that they usually have one or two guys that are 4- or 5-star recruits. J.J. McCarthy, 5-star from California or whatever. Blake Corum,
Illinois through Florida.
Yeah, whatever, sure. J.J. McCarthy, he didn't come from the portal.
No, Florida.
Florida. Yeah.
He's Illinois native IMG his senior year because Illinois canceled their season because of COVID.
Gotcha. And then Blake Corum, 5-star kid from Virginia or wherever that
was he a 5-star? I think he was a 4-star.
He was like a 4 or 5. He was a big guy. And then Donovan Edwards is another big stud.
Edwards, I believe, was a 5-star. And then who's their corner? What's his name?
Oh, Will Johnson's a big stud.
Will Johnson's a 5-star.
Mason Graham was a big stud too. Big stud from Arizona.
Mason Graham was. And then their freshman quarterback was a 5-star, I want to say.
I don't know. Whatever. Sure. There are
or maybe he dropped. Maybe he dropped actually. I think he was a 5-star at one point.
But it was brought to my attention that's but I don't, again, that's fine. I think it does bring to the table once again, if Ohio State is so far superior and so much better than Michigan on a year-lately basis, why am I the only one screaming for Ryan Day's head? I think that's a little interesting that so many people reached out to me to let me know.
They cheated for 3 years.
They cheated
to become relevant again.
If Ohio State is so much more talented that people felt the need to let me know how talented they are, one would think even if you were cheating, you would win. But whatever, that's an argument for another day. But I did want to give you props on that one. So
here we are. Appreciate it. All right, you got anything else there, Josh?
No, man, check out work at Buckeyes Wire. I've been absolute shit at sharing this on YouTube and all that stuff, and I do apologize, guys. I had someone reach out to me last week and actually said that they didn't even know we were on YouTube, so that's kind of a bummer. And that's on me. Okay. That's on me for not sharing it. And you, Michael, you don't share it enough either, so I'm not sharing all the play. My day job's been a little while, but we'll work on it. We'll do better.
I'm bad with sharing on social media.
My work's been pretty crazy, but we're gonna try to do better. We're also gonna try to go to in addition to YouTube, go to Rumble. Someone pointed out that Rumble's feature say they have some interesting features as far as like you can like close your screen and keep listening to it. Someone mentioned that like how on YouTube, like if you're watching the video and you close it, it shuts out the whole video. Someone said on Rumble, if you're watching us on the video, you can close the screen and then you can still listen to audios and take us in your car and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. Okay. I think that's kind of cool. So I'm definitely we'll start uploading there. I'm not really sure how that even works.
We'll look into it.
So yeah. So thanks, guys, and that's it for me.
Appreciate it. All right, have a good one. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.